Professor Boaz Ganor, 20 years of not only activity but agenda pioneering work at the International Institute for Counterterrorism. 1996, terrorism was not really a global issue. When you look back in 2016, what now comes to mind?
Well, you know, first of all, it's hard to believe that we're talking about 20 years. I mean, time flies. I was younger years ago, and together with a few of my friends and colleagues, we came to Professor Uri Reichman here at the Interdisciplinary Center with this idea, which was quite brave and unique idea to establish an institute, an academic institute that would deal only with counterterrorism, insurgency, guerrilla warfare, and so on and so forth. We saw ourselves back then as bridging the gap between academic perspectives and practical experience. But I have to say that none of the two sides really understood why there is a need for an academic institute to deal just with counterterrorism. The academicians, the scholars, believe that this is a too practical subject matter to deal with. The practitioners didn't understand how can those people which are exposed only to open sources information can contribute to their knowledge when they see top secrets on a daily basis. It took 5 years until the understanding of the world and even the understanding of decision makers in Israel had this breakthrough, understanding for the need for an institute like that that will bring to the table academic tools and academic disciplines such as psychology, sociology, political science, law, criminology, computer science, biology, chemistry, physics, you name it. 5 years later, if we count those years, we're talking about 2001, 9/11. 9/11 actually changed the whole world, changed the world of terrorism, and changed also the world of counterterrorism. You know, Dan, I was in the United States when this horrific attack occurred. I was actually giving a series of lecture, and I have a leaflet in my door in my office here at the Interdisciplinary Center, which is an invitation to my lecture under the title "Stopping Suicide Terrorism: The Israeli Challenge." The date is the 11th of September 2001. I was giving this lecture in San Francisco back then. From that day on, countering suicide terrorism and terrorism as a whole was no more just the Israeli challenge. It became to be the international, the global challenge. Unfortunately, today there is no one state which is immune to the threat of terrorism, and most of the states do understand that academic center of excellence like ICT can to a better understanding of the phenomenon and creating better policies and doctrine for counterterrorism.
It seems, as someone who's been quite involved here myself at the Institute for Counterterrorism, having actually done an advanced degree at your suggestion, and I think in retrospect, thank you again and again for that suggestion. But you named it the Institute for Counterterrorism, not terrorism. Now, it's been the point's been made to me that it would be difficult to call an institute the Institute for Terrorism, so you call it counterterrorism. But you may have done more than you understood that you were doing at the time, because today the global the world community, the international community, so-called, is looking for answers. They want to know what to do to defeat terrorism. So it's how do you see that now the counterterrorism brand of the ICT being mobilized today, where everyone's looking for answers with their hands up, confused and baffled?
Right. Well, there are different spectrums of counterterrorism. One of them is education. You educate the new leaders, the new decision makers, the new generation of decision makers worldwide and in Israel, and you have a greater core of alumnus, such as you, Dan. We're very proud that you actually is one of our best MA students, actually the veteran of ours and alumnus. That here, as you can see, take the knowledge and disseminate that to others via radio programs like Counterterrorism Today and so on and so forth. So this is only one way, of course, educating. We today, after 20 years of operation, can see our alumnus spreading all over the world in all echelons of counterterrorism, political decision makers, heads of security services, police commissioners, scholars, and so on and so forth. So for that, we are looking back with a lot of satisfaction on one hand. But more concretely, going back to your question, when I'm talking about counterterrorism, maybe it would sound weird. I refer to the term art. I do believe that counterterrorism is a certain type of an art. It's the art of finding the right balances between contradicting views, between contradicting goals, and so on and so forth. I'll give you one or two examples in this regard. One of these dimensions of this art is finding the balance between countering motivations and countering operational capabilities. When you really want to be effective in counterterrorism, you need to deal with root causes. You need to deal with the motivation and the reason why terrorists decides to use violence in order to promote their political ends. So dealing with motivation is one half of the equation of counterterrorism. The other half of the equation is countering their operational capability. You need to see that they will not be able to conduct terrorist attacks even if they have the motivation to conduct this attack. So countering motivation and countering operational capabilities, this is what counterterrorism is all about. Unfortunately, there is a contradiction between the two. We call it the boomerang effect in counterterrorism. When you are trying to lower down, demolish the operational capability of the terrorists, how do you do that? You fight them, no other way. You arrest them, you kill them if necessary, you dry their monetary support, and so on and so forth. As effective as you are, you raise their motivation to retaliate against you. This is the contradicting factors. How do you find the right balance? Being effective in counter-motivation and counter-operational capability, that's one aspect of the art of counterterrorism. I'll give you another aspect, and then the rest of the listeners and the viewers will need to come and take our executive programs to get the rest of the...
You actually, we might as well plug it. You have executive programs that are modules,
right,
that are 6-week programs.
Yes, it's actually 3 weeks in the summer, every summer, and definitely through the website of ICT, one can get into the information about that. The other example of this art of counterterrorism has to do with another balance. How do you balance within the democratic dilemma in counterterrorism? Now, what is the democratic dilemma in counterterrorism? It's the tension, the rivalry between the two factors. How are you going to be able or to be effective? How are you going to be able to be effective in your counterterrorism activity, and at the same time guard your liberal democratic values? You know, some people tend to believe that there is no contradiction between the two. I beg to differ. My PhD dissertation many years ago was on this tension between efficiency in counterterrorism and guarding liberal democratic values. When you just analyze the tension that occurred in the United States a few weeks ago in reference to the Apple and the privacy that has to do with the democratic dilemma in counterterrorism. You sacrifice some of your privacy in order to gain some efficiency in counterterrorism. But you don't want to lose your liberal democratic values for counterterrorism, and you don't want to disregard the need to fight terrorism in order to cherish your liberal democratic values. How do you find this balance? This is the art of counterterrorism.
How much do you find that today other democracies in the West are seeking out this type of advice and education at the ICT because of their own confusions and fears and concerns about the rise of global terrorism?
More and more. More and more. First of all, more decision makers are interested in getting briefings from ICT experts, in getting risk and threat analysis from ICT, in getting position papers from ICT, in participating in ICT wargaming and red teaming. This is another type of activity that we are conducting in order to help decision makers to comprehend the challenge that they are facing. But I would say it's not just the quantity or the number of decision makers, it's also the number of states which starts to be interested. States that until recently was not regarding themselves as potential victims from terrorism, now they clearly understand that they are not immune to this threat. I tend to believe that if you take Europe, for example, after the Brussels attack, it became very clear to many Europeans that something that we knew for so many years, that the strengths of the chain of counterterrorism security is as strong as the weakest link of the chain. So if you have a loophole, if you have a weak link such as Belgium, and you are living in France or in Germany, and you believe that your practitioners, security services, police officers are very knowledgeable and they can guard you, you are right. But the problem is that the weakest link might leak into your country and you might suffer from the weakness of another country altogether. So right now, there is a need for a new understanding, new doctrines, and new apparatuses, European apparatuses, that would, in my view, not just have better cooperation in counterterrorism, as everybody is talking about better cooperation, which is crucial. I'm talking about a joint activity against terrorism. I think that there is a need not to have better cooperation, say, in Europol. You need to have an apparatus that will collect intelligence, analyze intelligence for the whole continent of Europe. And you would need police capabilities, say negotiation teams and so on and so forth, that will be European and work for all the European countries at the same time.
I think you've just given us a perfect strategic microcosm of the interdisciplinary nature of the ICT and the interdisciplinary requirement for fighting terrorism.
Right.
So, Boaz Ganor, may I congratulate you on this 20th anniversary of the ICT, and also as your it's now not a new appointment, but your appointment as the dean of the Lauder School of Government. Very exciting times here at the International Disciplinary Center Herzliya and the International Institute for Counterterrorism. Professor Boaz Ganor, thanks you for being with us, and we hope to be able to grab you again before another year passes to bring you in here to the studios to share with our listeners the important work being done here against terrorism in favor of democracy and measuring, balancing those tensions
Thank you very much,
as we
John,
move
for having
forward.
me here.
Thank you.